We're looking for a poisonous frog, and here in South Louisiana, we have a very lesser known poisonous frog called the narrowmouth toad, and despite their name, they are in fact a frog. These fat little amphibians are pretty common, so it shouldn't take us too long to find one. Narrowmouth toads can live in a lot of places, and in this part of the US, we have the eastern narrowmouth toad. And I already know that they're around here because they have a pretty distinct call. So we'll be searching these small river cliffsides in hopes of finding one out on the move.
All this that you're looking at is mostly sand and clay, a little bit of limestone at the base, but it's all from the river, and you can see all the roots hold up this ledge, and it creates a spot for animals to dig in. Got a lot of trapdoor spiders, and your narrowmouth toads will be hanging out kind of like that, actually. Just like that frog there, who just had a little seizure. They'll be sitting right at the mouth of a burrow. You also get lots of really rare species along habitats like this, most of them endangered or extirpated, and that's another thing that I'm looking for while I'm out here. But narrowmouth toads, kind of what I'm looking for, the mouth of a burrow. There's a really cool little fat frog that hang out along these rivers. Oh, here we go. Got a narrowmouth. Hey, bud. How are you doing? Look at that little fatso. That is a narrowmouth toad. These are actually a frog species, but they are nicknamed narrowmouth toad simply because they look like a toad. They're little, they're fat, they don't jump very far. So you might wonder, how does this animal avoid predators? Well, they're actually pretty toxic. As far as North American amphibians go, this is not one that you're going to want to eat, or most of the animals around here are not going to want to be eating. Now you can identify a narrowmouth toad, one, because they're little and fat, and two, they've kind of got like a little fold, and I don't know what the name for that is, but kind of over the top of their head where their skin kind of overlaps above their eyes. They also typically have a little bit of a tan coloration and some patterning. Now my fingers getting really stuck together from handling this frog, and they do have a really nasty little toxin in their slime, and that's not something you want to be getting in your eyes, your nose, really anywhere. It's okay to get a little bit on your skin. It can be irritating, but it shouldn't cause any true problems. Now I used to always confuse these frogs for cricket frogs when I was little. They are very small, little brown frog, but they're much fatter. Like I said, they're a little thick little frog. They're kind of built like a toad, and they have a different little patterning on them. And also, as their name suggests, narrowmouth, their head narrows down. So they have a tiny little head on a big fat body. Now these toads would typically be eating little tiny things, termites, ants, anything they can get. And one thing that's really cool about narrowmouth toads is, since not much eats them, they actually kind of work as little tiny bug guard dogs. Now you'll see along here, all these little burrows. Most likely around here it's just going to be armadillos and little mammals, but in other areas, whether it be gopher tortoises, gopher frogs, any other small burrowing species, they will sit at the mouth of their tunnel, and stuff's not going to eat them because they're poisonous. And any little tiny bugs, ants, little pests, termites, ticks, anything that would get into a burrow and damage the larger animal, these little guys will eat. So even spiders will actually keep narrowmouth toads around as almost like a little pest control. They're a really cool species that will just eat anything tiny. And when it rains like this during the summer and spring months, you can hear these frogs pretty proactively. We were hearing some earlier, and it's just a loud shrill, like a nyeh sound. They don't sound like your typical frog, but they will puff up their neck and do that little call similar to most frogs, and they are going to be active in the more rainy seasons, spring, summer, times like this, but you can find them all year round under logs or under any kind of debris. They're a very generalist species. You can see them in your yard, you can see them in your garden, but this kind of habitat is something they really like. Up and along banks of rivers, up and along areas like this are really good areas to see narrowmouth toads in high numbers. Now, like I said, this is most likely a full-grown toad, and they are born with a slight toxin. However, that toxin does vary in toxicity depending on their diet. So if they eat things that are better for making that toxin, then they are going to be a more toxic frog. I'm not sure if they're like poison dart frogs in the sense that what they eat determines if they are toxic, but I do know that their diet does affect it. Now, as far as comparing this frog to a poison dart frog, these don't come anywhere near as close. My skin isn't going to turn red or anything like that, but this isn't something to worry about that you could potentially die from, but you can get really sick if you touch this frog and then touch your face and you happen to get it in your mouth or in your nose or something like that, oftentimes people will throw up or have really bad nausea after ingesting the toxins of this frog. It really can vary from person to person. I've never experienced it myself other than a little bit of slight skin irritation. But this is one of North America's really neat little poisonous frogs. That is the narrowmouth toad. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to go and check out the time we found a mole salamander in Louisiana. Another really cool amphibian there, and we will see you guys next time. Alright, I'm gonna go let this little guy go now.